My girlfriend cheated on me, but the truth was way more twisted when it came to light. Alright, I never thought I'd be writing about this, but here we go. My girlfriend Emma, 27F, and I, 28M, have been together for 3 years. We've lived together for 2, and I honestly thought everything was great between us. We had built a life together. Our apartment in the city was cozy, we had matching mugs, and we even started planning a trip to Europe next summer. We both worked full-time, Emma in marketing and me in tech, and life seemed pretty good. We had been talking about getting engaged. In fact, I was even starting to think about ring shopping, imagining how I'd propose. Our families loved each other, and my mom was practically already planning the wedding in her mind. But then, about 4 months ago, things started feeling off. Emma had just started a new job at a high-profile marketing firm. I was really proud of her. She'd worked so hard to get the position, and I knew she was excited. The only issue was that her hours started to get weird. First, it was just a few late nights, which I didn't think much about. Then, it became every night. She'd say things like, "We're in crunch time for this new campaign," or, "The client is super demanding." It seemed reasonable at the time, but soon enough, her phone became glued to her hand. She'd be texting constantly, and when I asked her who she was talking to, she'd just brush it off. "Just some people from work," she'd say, not even looking up from her phone. I shrugged it off, telling myself that it was just part of her adjusting to a new environment. But the distance between us grew. We used to talk all the time about everything. Now, our conversations were short, like she couldn't wait to be somewhere else. We'd have dinner, and she'd disappear to take calls in the bedroom, leaving me alone at the table with half-empty plates. I felt the gap growing, but I didn't want to seem insecure or controlling, so I stayed quiet. Things really took a turn one night about a month ago. Emma was out at yet another work dinner, and when she came home, it was well after midnight. The first thing I noticed was the smell of men's cologne. Strong, like she'd just walked out of someone's embrace. It hit me as soon as she stepped into the apartment. "Hey babe, how was dinner?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though my heart was pounding. She blinked, startled by my question. "Oh, it was fine," she said, her voice sounding a little too casual. She didn't offer any details, and when I leaned in to kiss her, she turned her face away and said, "I'm exhausted. I'm just going to crash." I tried to push the thought away, telling myself I was overreacting. But something didn't sit right with me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was just being paranoid. I thought about asking her more directly, but I didn't want to come across as jealous. After all, this was the woman I loved, the woman I trusted. Why would she cheat? But over the next few days, the uneasiness wouldn't leave me. She started canceling plans with me, saying she was too busy with work or too tired to go out. Her phone was constantly blowing up, and she'd flip it over every time I was near, saying it was just emails or texts from her team. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. Emma had left her phone on the counter when she went to shower. Normally, I would never look at her phone, but this time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My hand hovered over it, my heart pounding. I told myself I was just being crazy, that I should trust her, but I couldn't stop myself. I unlocked her phone. It was easy since I knew her passcode, and my stomach dropped when I saw the messages. They were mostly harmless at first, until I scrolled down and found a conversation with a guy named Jake. The texts between them were flirty, way too flirty for just coworkers. And then I saw it. "Last night was amazing. Let's do it again soon." The words blurred in front of my eyes. My heart was racing, and I could hear the water from the shower still running in the background. I stared at the screen, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. I waited for her to get out of the shower. My mind was racing, alternating between anger and confusion. Had she really done this? The woman I was planning to marry? When she finally came out, wrapped in a towel, I was already sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in my hand. "Emma," I said, my voice trembling. "Who's Jake?" Her face went pale. For a second, she just stood there, frozen, and then the excuses started pouring out. "He's just a coworker," she said, her voice too quick, too defensive. "We're just friends." I held up her phone, showing her the messages. "Friends don't send texts like this." At that point, she broke down. She sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just, we were working late and things got complicated." Complicated? I snapped, unable to contain my anger. "How long has this been going on?" "For 2 months," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "It started as emotional, but then it became more. Couldn't even look at her. The pain in my chest was overwhelming. I thought about all the nights she'd been working late, all the times she'd lied to me, and it all made sense. I felt like a fool, like my whole relationship had been a lie. "I need space," I said, my voice cold and distant. "I can't deal with this right now." Emma tried to apologize, but I didn't want to hear it. I told her she needed to leave, to go stay somewhere else while I figured things out. She packed a bag and left, still crying, and I was left alone in the apartment that suddenly felt empty and suffocating. I thought that was the end of the nightmare, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, I got a message on Facebook from a woman named Lauren. She introduced herself as Jake's fiancée. That's right, fiancée. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I had thought Emma's betrayal was the worst part, but this new revelation blew it all out of the water. "Hey, I don't know if you're the right person, but I need to talk to you about Emma and Jake," Lauren wrote. I stared at the screen, completely dumbfounded. I replied, and we ended up messaging back and forth for hours. Lauren told me that she had been engaged to Jake for over a year and had started noticing changes in his behavior about 4 months ago. The same time Emma had started acting distant with me. Jake, like Emma, had been working late, acting secretive and staying out at night. But here's the kicker. Jake wasn't just cheating with Emma. He had been seeing at least 3 other women. Lauren had gone through his phone one night after he came home late and found texts not only from Emma but also from 2 other women. One from his gym and another from his college days. Turned out, Jake was a serial cheater, stringing along multiple women at the same time, including Emma. When Lauren told me this, my mind was spinning. Emma thought she was special, thought she had something with Jake, but she was just one of many. The anger I had toward her started to mix with pity. She'd been played too, just like me. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made things more complicated. Lauren and I decided we couldn't let this go without confronting them. We planned to meet up with Jake and Emma at a coffee shop, each telling them we wanted to have a private conversation. The goal was simple: expose them both in front of each other. I wasn't sure if it would give me closure, but at this point, I needed to see them face the consequences of their actions. The day of the confrontation, my stomach was in knots. I wasn't sure how it would go down, but I knew I needed to do this. Lauren and I met up early, sitting in the corner of a quiet cafe. When Emma and Jake walked in together, their faces went from confusion to sheer panic. Emma froze, looking from me to Lauren, her eyes wide. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her voice shaky. "Why don't you both sit down?" I said, my tone cold. Lauren was the first to speak. She laid everything out, showing Jake the evidence she had collected. She spoke calmly but firmly, exposing every lie he had told, every woman he had been involved with. Jake tried to deny it at first, but when she showed him the screenshots, the photos, and the messages, his face drained of color. "This wasn't serious," Jake stammered, looking desperate. "They didn't mean anything." Emma turned to him, her face a mixture of shock and betrayal. "Wait, they? How many other women?" Jake just sat there, silent, unable to answer. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she realized the truth. She had been cheated on, too. The man she had thrown everything away for wasn't who she thought he was. Jake stormed out of the cafe, leaving Emma standing there in tears. She turned to me, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I thought..." I cut her off. "It doesn't matter, Emma. You still cheated. You still lied. We're done." She tried to apologize, to explain, but I was done. I didn't want to hear it anymore. I turned and left, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. It wasn't the closure I had expected, but it was closure nonetheless. Lauren and I stayed in touch after that. We'd bonded over the craziness of the situation, and while we were both hurting, it helped to have someone who understood what I was going through. Emma tried reaching out a few more times, but I blocked her. I couldn't go back to that life knowing what I knew. It's been a few months since then, and I'm doing my best to move forward. The pain is still there, but every day it gets a little easier. I've learned a lot from this experience, and I know now that trust is fragile. But I'm hopeful that one day, I'll find someone who values it as much as I do. So that's my story. What I thought was just a case of my girlfriend cheating turned out to be something much more twisted than I ever imagined. In the end, the truth came out, and while it was painful, it was also liberating. Unexpected update. Hey everyone, it's been a few months since I posted about my girlfriend Emma cheating on me with Jake, who turned out to be a serial cheater engaged to Lauren. The whole thing was a massive mess, and I really appreciate all the support and advice I got from that post. I wasn't sure if I'd ever update, but some new things have happened, and honestly, I still can't believe where it's all led. Buckle up, this gets wild. After the confrontation at the cafe, I completely cut ties with Emma. I blocked her on everything, phone, social media, email, you name it. I just couldn't deal with her excuses or the mess of emotions I felt whenever I thought about what she'd done. Lauren and I stayed in touch for a little while, helping each other cope with the fallout from the chaos Jake had caused. We supported each other through the initial stages of healing, but eventually we went our separate ways, agreeing it was best to move forward independently. For the first few weeks, I was a wreck. It was hard to reconcile the woman I loved for 3 years with the person who betrayed me. I went through a lot of the typical stages: anger, sadness, disbelief. I started going to therapy, which helped me process everything. I slowly began to pick up the pieces, focusing on my work, spending more time with friends, and taking care of myself. Then, about a month after the whole confrontation, Emma reached out again, through a mutual friend, Katie. I was annoyed at first that she had used Katie to get to me, but Katie assured me that Emma was really sorry and just wanted to talk one last time. Apparently, Emma had something important she needed to tell me. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear anything from her, but part of me was curious. What more could she possibly have to say after all this time? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Emma in person. I wasn't expecting much, just another round of apologies and excuses. But what I got was much bigger than that. We met at a park, in the middle of the day, with people jogging and walking their dogs all around us. I could tell Emma was nervous the moment I saw her. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept well in weeks. She sat down on the bench next to me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us was thick. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to tell you the truth, the full truth. There's more to this than you know." I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but I braced myself. I thought I knew everything. After all, she cheated and she got played by Jake just like I did. What more could there be? "I'm pregnant," Emma said, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. I just stared at her. Pregnant? My mind was spinning. It didn't make sense. For a moment, I thought maybe she was saying this to get me back, to manipulate me. But she looked too broken for that. "When did you find out?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel my heart racing. "A few weeks after we broke up," she replied. I didn't know what to do. I was in shock. I still am. I swallowed hard. "Is it Jake's?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I think so, but I'm not completely sure." Her words hung in the air. I felt like the world had just flipped upside down again. She explained that during the time she was seeing Jake, she and I had also been intimate, so there was a slim chance the baby could be mine. Emma had taken a paternity test but didn't have the results back yet. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said, wiping her eyes. "I've made so many mistakes. I'm not asking for anything from you, but I felt like you deserved to know." I sat there trying to process everything. Pregnant. The baby could be Jake's or mine. I felt sick. I didn't even know how to respond. I stood up, pacing around the park, my mind a storm of emotions. Emma stayed seated, watching me, waiting for me to say something, Anything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I finally asked, my voice shaking. You should have told me as soon as you found out. I know, she admitted, her voice cracking. I was scared. I didn't want to drag you back into my mess. I told her I needed time to think. I walked away, leaving her sitting there alone. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, confusion. It was all hitting me at once. A week later, I got a text from Emma. Asterisk, the paternity results are in. Can we meet? Asterisk, I reluctantly agreed. I needed closure. I needed to know, for better or for worse, if this baby was mine. We met at the same park, and when I saw her, she looked even more anxious than before. She handed me the envelope, her hands trembling. I took it and ripped it open, my heart pounding in my ears. Jake was the father. I felt an overwhelming wave of relief and sadness at the same time. I wasn't the father, but the woman I had loved was carrying the child of the man who had destroyed both of our lives. I handed the paper back to her, feeling a strange sense of finality. So that's it, I said, more to myself than to her. Jake's the father. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered again, for everything. I didn't know what to say. The reality of the situation was too much. I told her that I wished her well, but we were done. There was no going back, not after everything that had happened. I walked away for the last time, feeling the weight of the past few months finally starting to lift. Here's where things get even crazier. A few weeks after that meeting with Emma, I got a message from Lauren again. She had some news of her own about Jake. Apparently, after everything came out, Jake tried to patch things up with her. He denied the other women, said Emma was a mistake, and begged Lauren to take him back. But here's the kicker. Lauren had just found out Jake was still seeing another woman. Not Emma, not any of the other women we knew about, but someone completely new. It turns out, Jake had been involved in yet another affair, even while trying to reconcile with Lauren. She was done, completely over him. And here's where the universe gave us one final, unexpected twist. Lauren and I have started dating. Yep, you read that right. After everything that happened, Lauren and I reconnected. It started slowly. We were both still healing from the mess Jake and Emma had created in our lives. But as we talked more, we realized we had a lot in common. We bonded over our shared experiences, and eventually something more developed. It's still new, and we're taking things slow, but it feels good. For the first time in months, I feel like I'm in a healthy, honest relationship. I never thought this was where things would lead, but life has a funny way of surprising you. So yeah, that's the update. The whole situation with Emma and Jake was a nightmare, but somehow, out of all that chaos, I found something good. Life is strange, but I guess sometimes it works out in the most unexpected ways. Thanks again for all the support from my last post. I never expected to be where I am now, but I'm grateful for how things have turned out.